I mean, I had a relationship with him. He wasn't one of my best friends. We had some mutual respect between each other. I never really hung out with him. And I was, I was a high school dropout, and my father put me to work right away, in dice games and blackjack games. So I was more of a criminal than I guess Junior was, coming up in the ranks. He's got this thing now going with this Woodsack Mafia thing, coming after everybody that cooperated, when he cooperated. I mean, that's the reason I knew, that was the beef between the Gottis and the Varios, because Tommy DeSimone killed Foxy in his home, in his bed, from what I understand. And hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Ruggiano Jr. I want to welcome everybody to Reform Gangsters. And if you like our content, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Become a Patreon member, get access to us, and ask me questions, and I'll give you the answers on Mafia history. Today, I'm going to talk about a lot of questions about John Gotti Jr. My relationship with him, what I think about him, and I mean, I had a relationship with him. He wasn't one of my best friends. We had some mutual respect between each other. I never really hung out with him. I was in his company, when I was around and he was around. I guess you couldn't say we weren't the best of friends, but we were friends. We were both raised by, fathers that were larger than life, so I could identify with that. I could identify with him being John Gotti's son. I was Fat Andy's son. Of course, my father never got to the level of John, but my father was front page news while I was growing up, before John was front page news. So we had that in common. I was Fat Andy's son. I got treated differently than other people, like John Jr. got treated differently than other people. But we both came up differently. He was in military school, and I was in the street. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. That's just what he was. He was in military school, and I was, I was a high school dropout, and my father put me to work right away, in dice games and blackjack games. So I was more of a criminal than I guess Junior was, coming up in the ranks. I worked in dice games, crap games, poker games, blackjack games. I wrote numbers. I did sports. I sold hijacked merchandise. I don't believe he never did any of that. His involvement in stuff like that was the people around him were involved in stuff like that, and they brought him money. I don't think he was hands-on. I mean, I worked in dice games. Never saw him work in a dice game. Like I said, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. We just raised differently. He was John's son. I was Fat Andy's son. And I was more hands-on in the street. The difference now, today, between him and I is, like, he doesn't take responsibility for any of his actions, really. You know what I mean? Like, listen, he had a lot of guys around him that were killers, that were killing people. They were selling drugs. He was involved in all that. Like, it's crazy. He beat all those cases. He got hung juries. He was guilty for a lot of the stuff he was charged with. But he beat the case. That's the justice system. The jury is out there. Are starstruck, I guess. But he was guilty of a lot of things he was charged with. And I know that firsthand. I'm sure after this video comes out, the Gottis will attack me, which that's fine. They have nothing else to do. Him and his sister, they attack everybody. He's got this thing now going with this Woodsack Mafia thing, coming after everybody that cooperated, when he cooperated. I mean, there's paperwork on it. He profited. Once you profit, and Sammy talks about this. Once you proffer, once you sit down with the FBI or the Justice Department, you cooperated. That once that door closes and you're in there alone with them, you cooperated. You cooperated, and there's no way around it. Even if nobody got indicted or nothing came of it, or you cut it short, you cooperated, and that's it. You make a move. I don't like to use the word rat, but, like in the street, they call things rat moves. You make a movie, that's a rat move. You quit the mob, that's a rat move. You know what I mean? And so he cooperated. he could say whatever he wants to say. People ask me, do I think he cooperated? And the answer is yes, he cooperated. So he could get around it any way he can, but he did, and he doesn't take responsibility for any of his actions. He was involved in acts of violence. I'll get into that. I know a story about the kid that was stabbed on Jamaica Avenue, but I'll talk about that another time, because my father and his crew was indirectly involved with one of the people that died later on as an aftermath of that. So actually 2 people were murdered because of that incident. And I'll get into that at another time. So, subscribe and stay tuned, and we'll talk about that at another time. But, that's the difference between him and I. I don't want to keep repeating myself. He don't take responsibility for his actions. We do. It was, I guess, it was a father and son relationship. I mean, they really never hung out together. I mean, when I used to go out with John, I went out with John a lot, clubbing, and Junior never came with us, and he never came out with us. I was with John in Club A in Brooklyn, the Top Hat and the Brown Derby, and and a lot of clubs and in Pastels, many nights in Pastels in Brooklyn. And Junior never came with us. He never came with us. He used to go out with his own crew. He never came with us. I guess it was close. I mean, it was his son. They were father and son. I mean, I never saw any affection between the 2 of them or anything like that. But I'm sure it was close. But like I said, they never, like I went out with my father. We went out party. We went to the Copa together. We went to nightclubs together. We went to concerts together. I don't know if he did any of that together. I think they might have went to some prize fights together. They used to go to prize fights together. Even at Yankee Stadium, my father would come to Yankee Stadium. And every time I ran into John, he was a big Yankee fan. Him and Mikey Scars. As a matter of fact, they used to give me tickets for the Yankee games. He was always at the Yankee games with Mikey Scars and his nephews and his sons and his nephews and at the games. So their relationship. I'm not saying it was definitely not strained. It was okay. I remember the night he got straightened out. I didn't even know he was proposed. Honestly, it was Christmas Eve, 1988, I believe it was Christmas Eve, and we were at the club on the Bergen Hunt Fish Club. John was there, and I was wondering why John was there and not performing the ceremony, because I knew Skinny Dom Pizzoni was getting straightened out because my father and Tony proposed him, and we were actually waiting at the Bergen Hunt Fish Club for Dominic to come back to congratulate him, because it was Christmas Eve and we were all waiting to go home to our families, but we were at Richie Gotti's Club Cafe waiting for Dominic to come back to congratulate him and have a couple of drinks. And I was standing on 101st Avenue with Tony Lee, and actually Joe Watts was there. And Dominic pulled up, and we walked across 101st Avenue and hugged him and kissed him and congratulated him. And we went in the club and we sat down. And then a couple of minutes later, Junior walked in and everybody got up and was congratulating him. And I leaped over to Tony Lee and I said, Tony, did he get straightened out too? And Tony told me yes. And I had no idea he was even proposed. But he got straightened out the same night as Skinny Dom, and Mikey Scars also got straightened out that night. I think 10 guys actually got straightened out that night. And how do I know that? Is because, Sammy the Bull, he performed the ceremony. He was the underboss. He performed the ceremony, and he told me he straightened out 10 guys that night. But I only knew of 3 of them that night, Mikey Scars, Dominic, and Junior. So I didn't even know he was getting straightened out. I was a little surprised he got straightened out, because like I said, he was never really a criminal. He had criminals around him like Johnny A. and a couple of other people that were killers and criminals. They were big major drug dealers. He was very close with Ronnie One Arm. So, so that's, I guess, the beginning of my stories about John Jr. I'll get into more stories about him. Like I said, I want to get into the murder of on Jamaica Avenue that was committed where a person got stabbed. And we'll talk about that at a later time. And that's the difference between, not to knock anybody. I'm not here to knock people. That's not what I want to do. I'm here to tell stories, tell my truth. And that's the difference between me and someone like John Jr. John Jr. never did anything like that. He never, he had people around him do stuff like that. I was more hands-on than him, maybe because his father was in a different position than mine, but I was more hands-on than him. Like I got arrested. I went to jail. The first time I went to jail was for, was for a robbery because my crew was robbing a liquor warehouse, and I felt that I should have been there. I didn't want to just stay back and get an end, which I had all the rights to do. I could have done that, but I didn't. I went with them, and I got arrested with them, and I went to prison with them. And that's the difference between me and a lot of other wise guys' sons. Not that I'm knocking them. Listen, God bless them, that they didn't get arrested or they didn't have to do that to earn a living, but that's what I did. That's the difference between me and them. I was more hands-on. I was more of a criminal than them, maybe because I had different habits than them. I like to go out and party. I like to go out with women. I like to go to clubs. I liked action. They more like stood in their neighborhoods and never left their neighborhoods. Maybe that was the difference between us. So another topic I like to cover real quickly is everybody keeps, everybody's all hopped up about Goodfellas, and the characters in Goodfellas, So people keep asking me about Tommy DeSimone, about his disappearance. People are under the impression that something to do with one of their sisters, and to my knowledge, it didn't have anything to do with anybody's sister. It had to do with romantic triangle. Foxy went with somebody that he shouldn't have went with, and I don't want to mention her name because she still lives in the neighborhood, and there's a daughter involved. Tommy's daughter's involved, and but that's the reason I knew. That was the beef between the Gottis and the Varios, because Tommy DeSimone killed Foxy in his home, in his bed, from what I understand, and I know the Gottis were pushing up on the Caseys to kill Tommy. And that was one of the reasons, everybody says Billy Bats. But to my knowledge, the biggest reason was because Tommy killed Foxy. And how do I know that? Is because my father was very, very, very tight with Paulie Vario. My father was in Missouri Federal Prison, in the hospital, in the federal prison hospital, where actually John Gotti died. My father was there when he lost his lyrics and he had to go for speech therapy. They sent my father to Missouri, and Paulie Vario was there. And in that prison, in that yard, they had conversations. And one of the conversations was about Tommy DeSimone. And Paulie told my father, who told me, that the Gottis wanted Paulie to hand Tommy over to them to kill. And Paulie Vario told the Gottis that they cleaned their own laundry. So Paulie Vario's crew killed Tommy. It's coming out that Bruno Fasciola was one of the shooters, which is possible because they were close. It had to be somebody close to Tommy. The guy actually did think he was getting straightened out that day. That's all true. The day he disappeared. I knew his brother Bobby very well. People keep asking if Tommy Agro killed Tommy A, killed anybody that was, killed Tommy's brothers. Not to my knowledge. Tommy didn't kill none of them. Tommy A didn't kill Tommy DeSimone. From what I know through my father is that Tommy was killed by his own crew. He wasn't turned over to the Gottis. He was killed by his own crew. That's what I know of the story.